sorry. Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today for the press event. I have with me today a number of family members with loved ones in Gaza and in the region who's unable to get to safety. And there will be a number of different speakers as well, and I will call upon them one by one. But to let you know, we have Omar Omar, who is the founder of the Gazan Canadians League and the Gazan Canadian with family members in Gaza. We also have Najla Alzaanin, who's the Gazan Canadian with family members awaiting evacuation under the TRV program. We have Hana Marku, who's an immigration and refugee lawyer initiating a federal court case on the TRV program administration. Last but not least, we will have Gur Tsabar is a silent T, and who is involved with Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition, and who's also the executive director of the Movement Media Hub. We're gathered here today, once again, to highlight the crisis that's going on in Gaza, more particularly the situation with the government with their special immigration measure. You'll recall that the special immigration measure was introduced 2 years ago back in January. In fact, the Liberal government came late in the day in announcing the program. And when they had finally announced it, they put in a cap of 5,000 applications, and they also marred the program with endless barriers to which families were confused and had a difficult time navigating all of those barriers to get their application through. Everybody was told that they had to wait for a code, and for many people, the code never came. And then eventually, the government changed the story and said, actually, don't wait for a code. In fact, don't apply through that program. Apply for a TRV, which is what families ended up doing. And they ended up doing that, and the government promised that they would bring them to safety expeditiously. Well, that didn't happen either. Families applied for the TRV, and they were stuck in the system. Many of them, as they wait for the government to process their application, they saw their loved ones having been displaced again and again and again. Some have actually lost their loved ones, and they never made it through to safety. The government changes their story persistently, and it's different procedures and different reasons or excuses of why people cannot come to safety. They keep saying that we have to have your biometrics done. When the government knew very well in the region, there was no way that they could actually get their biometrics done. There are no offices there that can actually process their biometrics. We even have family members who somehow managed to get their biometrics done, and they still can't get to safety. We have family members who, with loved ones who are Canadian citizens, and they cannot get out. The government would even say to you, well, the children can get out, but not the mother. Not the mother because she doesn't have Canadian status. Who would actually separate a mother and a child in that instance? Well, the Liberal government would, and they would not let the mother and therefore the family to come out. We have situations where during this prolonged period of waiting, where family members deliver children, babies, and then to add them to the application, it was filled with conflicting and confusing responses. First, the government says, sorry, the quota is up. You can't add your baby to the file. Then they changed it and let one baby be added and another not be added to the file. It is complete chaos in the process of how this program is being handled. Since the situation has surfaced, I have written no less than 8 letters to different ministers, successive different ministers of immigration, outlining the situation, urging action for the government to take, and to the latest minister, to which I have written a letter to her after her appointment on May 26. To date, I have yet to receive a response. In that writing of that letter, I noted for the minister that IRCC had indicated 811 people have arrived. That's less than a quarter, by the way, of the number of people who's applied under that quota. And that's also a number of different people under different programs. They are not all the TRV special immigration measure. They're under different programs at different times, and they all kind of got lumped into this. The latest figure that we got, that family members received from the family, from IRCC, that number is 886, is marginally better than what I first got from the government back in April. So what you can see, and how you can see the whole situation unfolding, is that there is no urgency from the government to take action. The government is not willing, there's zero political will to try and bring people to safety. We have had situations whereby it is difficult for families to get their biometrics, but in those other circumstances, the government always figured out a way to find alternatives to doing biometrics in that country. They found alternatives to make it happen and manage to bring people to safety. Albeit it was challenging, albeit it took time, but it was effort made and there were measures put in place to bring people to safety. What we're here to say, what the family here are to say, enough is enough. How many more family members have to die? The urgent situations where children are injured, where family members are sick and they have no access to medication, where people are being starved and they're unable to get the necessary nutrition that is required. Can you imagine having had a baby and there's no baby formula in an environment like that? You're living in a tent where there is no clean water. You are being bombarded. You just never know if you're going to make it out alive that day. And that is the reality of what's happening. So we are demanding action from the government. We want alternatives to the biometric measure. We want the government to evacuate and bring people out. We want the government and GAC to get on with it so that they can negotiate exit visas with the government there. We want people to make it to safety. People are not asking for more. They're asking for equal treatment as other measures have been put in place. I would want to highlight the situation with Ukraine. The government actually even bypassed biometrics, and people didn't have to go through an onerous application process, and there was no cap. And many, many people made it to safety. And that was the right thing to do. The NDP advocated for that. And we want these families to be treated the same. We want the applications to be expedited, and we don't want to hear any more news of family members unable to bring their loved ones to safety, and while they're waiting, their loved ones have been killed. So with that, I am going to ask the speakers to come forward one by one, and they will tell you firsthand experience of what's going on with their families and the situation that they are faced with. So first, I'm going to invite Omar Omar to come forward.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Omar Omar, and I represent Gazan, our grassroots movement called Gazan Canadians. We have here multiple families with us who have been advocating with us since day one about this matter, thanks to MP Jenny Kwan from day one, who has been also advocating on our behalf. The reality is this. The reality is the Canadian government is enjoying torturing us Canadians from Palestinian heritage by keeping us waiting, while waiting, watching our own family member dies in the Gaza Strip. I had a sister who had cancer in the Gaza Strip, and I've been asking the Canadian government to evacuate her based on this program, the Gaza Special Immigration Program. and the Canadian government did not work on evacuating her. She was evacuated by the Americans and an NGO on the ground, sent to Egypt, and now she is under chemotherapy in Egypt. The fact is, there has been Canadians in Gaza are being stuck, and when the Canadian government been asked to evacuate these people, Immigration Canada said, we can only evacuate the children. We have here Yasser. He is waiting for his wife, who is not a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, with his 2 kids. And he has been asking for 2 years to get his kids out, 2 Canadian citizen kids, with their mom. Canadian government is saying no. Even when they bring the justification that they keep saying that we need people to do biometrics in the Gaza Strip, even people who have biometrics in the Gaza Strip are not being evacuated. And my friend here, Najla, has her mom in Gaza who had a super visa. She did biometrics 2 years ago, even more than 2 years, and she's not been evacuated. In another case, they keep saying that we will try to process the people application who are stuck in Egypt. And in our case, we have here our sister Iman with her mom. Iman, her husband is now staying in Egypt for almost more than a year, who paid a bribe to escape from Gaza to Egypt. He's a 65 years old man. His whole life, he worked in his own shop. He had nothing to do with anyone. As a matter of fact, now he's facing depression. He's sick and tired, just waiting. So in every justification, if you notice, in every angle that they try to bring to Canadians as justification to pause this program, it's all lies, but nothing but lies. When Najla asked the Canadian Minister of Immigration about evacuating our families, she said that we do not have Canadian troops in the Gaza Strip. And my question here, who asked for Canadian troops to be in the Gaza Strip? France did not have Canadian troops, their French troops in Gaza when they evacuated people in hundreds. Students who are now students in France have been evacuated. No one asked for troops. They just made people leave without doing biometrics, and they had their own conditions. Belgium evacuated people in hundreds. Indonesia in thousands. Indonesia did in thousands, and other countries have done that, except the Canadian government, who made a big PR show saying that we are saving Palestinians and we're launching a program to save and reunite people with their families in Gaza. The only government who said and claimed that they're doing a program for us is the main and only government who did not participate or anticipate in evacuating people. It makes no sense to me, and in every excuse Immigration Canada is doing doesn't make any sense to any one of us. We used to meet them every week. Since meeting them since 2 years until now, there are no changes. We've been repeated the same answers over and over again. You feel like it's a ChatGPT answers with the same justification, and we give them facts. We send them numbers of people who have been evacuated by other countries. We send them PDFs. We send them letters on foreign government's website saying that they have evacuated patients. We have over 300 patients who are eligible under this program. They passed security clearance and they passed eligibility, but there is no evacuation. Even when we ask them to evacuate those who are under this program and having an in need for critical medical attention, the government says no. In matter of fact, I go back to my own points. What they are doing from day one is torturing Canadians who have Palestinian origin. Not only torturing them, but also sending weapons to kill our own family members. So you're not evacuating them, you're not saving them, and you're just torturing us. We need an answer, and we need an evacuation like every other country have done. Every other Canadian ally have been doing it, and they have done it in thousands. Canada is the only country that says no because there is no political will. And the Prime Minister knows about this program. He has been briefed about our issue, but he's taking no action. So I have 2 asks. The first ask is for the Prime Minister to step in and actually show his goodwill towards Palestinians and Canadians who have Palestinian heritage and origins. And secondly, for my fellow Canadians, we're not asking for 100,000 immigrants. Whether you are with immigration or not, that's not the question. We are in need to save only 5,000 people for now who are direct family members and bring them, reunite them here with us. This is our ask. It's very simple. It's very simple because when you commit to issuing almost 1 million visas for people of Ukraine for a war, then it's your moral eligibility and compass. It's your moral duty to at least save some of those who are under genocide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. Next, we'll have Najla.
So my name is Najla, and I'm originally from Gaza Strip. I have my whole family still trapped in Gaza. I came here as a student in 2019 to Nova Scotia, and I haven't seen my family since then. My family has my mother, my siblings, and their spouses and children. I have 13 nephews and nieces. 11 of them are the ages of 2 months and 12 years old. And they are still living under this bombardment, genocide, and being starved. The last displacement that actually I lost count how many times they got displacement. Last one was 2 days ago. They had to flee from Gaza Strip under bombardment in a journey full of bombing and waiting for like 16 hours to reach their final destination, where they so-called safe area, which it's a lie. There is no safe area in Gaza. My mother is 62 years old, and she's diabetic. And since the war started, she has no access to medication and clean water or food. She has been forced to flee more than countless times from the north of Gaza, Beit Hanun, to Rafah, going back to Gaza, then going back to middle of Gaza. My mom is going through severe complication. Her weight went down from 150 pounds to 100 pounds because she can't afford or she can't find the medications or the good nutrition for herself. So she's only 100 pounds now. I have 3 infants who were born during this genocide. Their parents are struggling to find baby formulas that is not existing in Gaza because of the Israeli blockade in Gaza and preventing baby's formula. 2 of them had to be at the hospital, hospitalized because they showed signs of malnutrition because there is no baby's formula. Their mothers they couldn't feed them. And my brother was in Khan Yunis. He was injured with his kids and family back in July, and his in-law were get killed. So, and many times, 3 times, my mom and my brothers also were bombed. They had to, they pulled them out from under the rubble, so I could lose my family anytime. I have my mother who has already biometrics. She provided the biometrics in September 2023 in Egypt, and it happened that she went back to Gaza 1 week before the war started. I was trying to bring her with my sister to attend my graduation, which happened last May, but unfortunately the war started, they couldn't come, and I applied for my entire family under the Gaza special measure. So even my mother, who has medical complication and she has already the biometrics, Canadian government are not willing to evacuate her. I have been trying to contact many MPs, the Minister of the Immigration, Lina Diab Mitlij, to advocate for my mother and my sister evacuation since they have the biometrics, but always I found the closed door and no response to our demands to meet with her. So I want to say that this is not just a policy failure. This is a discrimination against us as Canadian Palestinians who live here. And this is Canada tells us that our families' life don't matter and we don't matter. And they prefer that we watch our family get killed through our phone screens rather than bringing him to safety as they promised us in January 2024. So I think Canada must act. It's not the time just for empty statements, empty words. It's the time for solid actions, and it's the time that Canada shows that they are at the right place of the history and fulfill the promise that they made and see us as a human and as a citizen, because we work here, we pay taxes. At the same time, they are sending these taxes to fuel the war and the genocide that is happening in Gaza Strip. So, and our family cannot wait any longer because each minute, each second means we lose more members of our families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we've got Hana.
IRCC has failed Palestinian Canadians. In January 2024, IRCC launched this policy, and it was supposed to provide safe refuge to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Canadians were told, if you have a family member in Gaza, apply to this program and we will give them safe refuge. And Canadians took IRCC at its word. They took every step that was asked of them. They gave lists of their family members' names. They promised to provide unconditional financial support to their loved ones once they came to Canada. They showed proof that they're citizens and that they're residing in Canada. The next step was supposed to be simple. IRCC would make sure that the Canadian family members were eligible and then issue unique codes to each member of the family that was in the Gaza Strip. And with the codes, they would then go online and submit visa applications. Our office represents clients who've been waiting hundreds of days for movement on their visa applications. Their Canadian family members have begged IRCC for information about what is happening with their visa applications. And what they've gotten in response is silence. We've been forced to go to court to compel IRCC to tell Palestinian Canadians what is going on with their visas. The excuse that IRCC has given again and again in the courts and also to the Canadian public is that security assessments need to be completed, and security assessments can't be done until biometrics are completed. And when IRCC is talking about biometrics, what they mean is visa applicants have to go to a Canadian embassy or a visa application center and give their fingerprints and have their photos taken. The fingerprints and photos are then used to conduct the security assessment. There is no place in the Gaza Strip where Palestinians can provide their fingerprints and have their photos taken. They have to go outside of Gaza to do this, and IRCC has always known this. IRCC has promised from day one of the policy that Canada would advocate for people to leave so that they could provide biometrics. And IRCC first published their instructions on this in January of last year when the policy opened. And the instructions said, quote, Canada will seek approval from local authorities for departure from Gaza, and, quote, will put forward names of applicants to the governments of Israel and Egypt. The same instructions say Canada will contact applicants with information about exiting Gaza. In July of last year, these instructions were updated to say if your application passes a preliminary screening, we will forward your name to the local authorities to facilitate your exit from Gaza. The current version of the instructions that are still on IRCC's website as of today says if your application passes a preliminary eligibility and admissibility assessment, we will work with local authorities to advocate for your exit out of Gaza. And what I can tell you as a lawyer litigating these cases is that no meaningful steps, none, have been taken by Canada that have resulted in visa applicants being able to leave Gaza. Seeking approval from foreign governments, putting forward names, working with local authorities, none of the court records that my office has seen show that any of these steps have been taken for our clients. Canada knew that biometrics had to be done outside of Gaza. Canada knew that even in peacetime, Gaza is an open-air prison with no freedom of movement, and especially now with no functional border points. Canada knew that these applicants stood no chance, none at all, of being able to leave the Gaza Strip without some kind of help from the outside. That's why they told Palestinians, this is what we will do to help you. And this isn't the first time that Canada has dealt with war zones. In the case of Afghanistan, Canada issued facilitation letters to get people on flights out of Kabul. In the case of Ukraine, Canada had mobile biometric kits for applicants who couldn't get to a Canadian embassy, couldn't get to a visa application center. In the case of Kosovo, the country that I was born in, Canada airlifted refugees to safety. There are lots of steps Canada can try to make it provide the safe refuge they promised, but by not trying, they're guaranteeing that nothing will happen. IRCC has abandoned the Palestinians who saw this policy as a lifeline for them. And what makes me angry is that IRCC doesn't think that the promises that they made here matter. They don't think it matters that they told Palestinians, we will advocate for you, and then did not. But it does matter. It matters to the Canadians who believe their government, and it matters to the Palestinians who've tried to fill out application forms and collect documents in rubble while starving, while escaping bombing, and while facing death. Canada's promises do matter, and we will fight to make sure that our government does its job and treats Palestinians with the decency and the compassion they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Last but not least, we have Gur.
Prime Minister Carney, Minister Diab, for 23 months, 716 days, Palestinian Canadian families have viscerally exhausted themselves before your machinery of cruelty. They have filled out their forms while their neighborhoods turned to ash. They have cataloged every scar, every wound, every proof of humanity as if being Palestinian is an original sin that must be documented, verified, and excused through paperwork. They have sold everything they own. They have watched their children grow hollow with hunger while waiting for your permission to live. And you have practiced the art of legalized murder through delay. Today, over 4,000 human beings, not numbers, not cases, not files, over 4,000 souls sit trapped in Gaza and Egypt, their fates resting in filing cabinets, while you debate their worthiness over coffee and meetings. Let's strip away the lies. If these were 4,000 Ukrainians, they would have been here in an instant. You didn't just waive biometric requirements for Ukrainians. You rolled out red carpets. You chartered flights. You opened your arms to 300,000 of them because their suffering looked like something you could understand. But Palestinians, you gave them a teeny tiny limit, 5,000, like you're rationing human life. No flights, no urgency, no mercy. Your program demands Palestinians submit social media accounts like criminals under surveillance. It requires them to document every scar on their body as if surviving genocide makes you suspicious. Palestinian teachers, doctors, children get treated as threats, requiring endless vetting while Ukrainian families walk straight through open doors. Just bureaucratic murder disguised as security protocols because from your perspective, Palestinian equals terrorist. For 77 years, the terrorist label has been weaponized to strip Palestinians of humanity. Nelson Mandela stayed on the U.S. terrorist list until 2008, 18 years after apartheid ended, because that word is not about truth, it's about control. It's about making you terrified of Palestinian survival, so you'll look away when they're exterminated. This racist obstacle course didn't happen by accident, and we all know why, don't we? Let's say the quiet part out loud. You're not making those decisions. Washington is. Tel Aviv is. You've turned Canadian sovereignty into a wholly owned subsidiary of foreign genocidal interests. You've made our humanitarian programs conditional on approval from nations that profit from Palestinian elimination. Where are those famed Canadian elbows, Mark? You've traded our independence for a seat at tables where Palestinian lives, our currency, and Canadian dignity is the down payment. 4 weeks ago, desperate families came to you, Minister Diab, with 7 potential solutions. Every single one you rejected out of hand. Red Cross biometrics, Israel said no, as if this rogue apartheid state gets to dictate Canadian policy. IRCC delegations accompanying Red Cross staff, too dangerous. Though we all know it's not too dangerous for the Canadian aid workers who go there daily. The fact is you've outsourced Canadian sovereignty to foreign capitals while Palestinian grandmothers die waiting for your permission to breathe. France, Belgium, Qatar all evacuated Palestinians from Gaza, but Canada perfected the art of seeming humanitarian while systematically ensuring almost nobody survives this process. How about you be honest for a change and admit this program was designed to fail? that every requirement was calculated torture disguised as due diligence. You're not rescuing Palestinian families. You're slowly murdering them with false hope while the world watches Gaza get turned into a graveyard. So here are demands, not requests, not appeals, not polite Canadian suggestions. Demands. End every in-person requirement today. Create pathways for biometrics in Canada, or eliminate them entirely. You did it for Ukrainians in 48 hours. You can do it for Palestinians in 24. Those 4,000 plus people trapped in Gaza and rotting in Egyptian refugee camps. Expedite their clearance before more die. Charter flights like you did for Ukraine, or admit that this was always genocidal political theater. We will not accept one more excuse, one more delay, one more dead Palestinian child while you hide behind paperwork written in foreign capitals by war criminals. The choice is binary. Act like Palestinian lives matter, or stand revealed as the genocidal architects of calculated neglect you've always been. Your lies are criminal and are killing people. Your delays are the murder weapons, and your bureaucracy is genocide disguised as BS Canadian compassion. 23 effing months of this. How do you sleep at night, Mark? How do you look at your own children knowing you've sentenced Palestinian children to death by filing cabinet? Stop the killing. Get them out, do it now, or rest assured you'll go down in history as the master of bureaucratic genocide.
Thank you. So those are all our speakers, and we're going to open the floor for questions from the media.
Yeah, Ms. Kwan, it's for a question for Ms. Kwan and Mr. Omar. Both of you talking about sort of the perceived lack of will here to get people out, pointing to France, Belgium. Just what do you make of Canada joining other allies and recognizing a Palestinian state while not taking the same action they have in actually working with Israel and other partners to get people out of Gaza?
Well, the action that the government has taken in recognizing Palestinian states, something that the NDP has been calling for. They're late to the party, if you will, in comparison to other countries and what they have done. With that being said, it is a good thing that it is being done, but there is something even more urgent than that, and that is to get family members and to honor the promise that the Canadian government made to Palestinian families, and that is to get their loved ones to safety. Remove the barriers. Do what is necessary. I know for a fact that there are NGOs on the ground that has worked with other governments and got families to safety. Canada has not engaged in that process. I've asked the minister why. I've sent the information to them. I've kept the information confidential so as not to jeopardize that program for other people. But the government has not undertaken the work that is necessary to bring them to safety. There is no justification for that. The other thing I want to highlight is this. While the government recognizes the Palestinian state, they are in the meantime facilitating, and Canada is complicit in the killing of civilians, in the killing of children. And Canada knows this because what they have to do is to close the loophole for Canadian arms, parts and components and technology that's being shipped to the United States and then transfer to Israel and end up killing civilians against humanitarian and international laws. Canada knows this. So I have tabled a private member's bill just last Friday, and I call on the Prime Minister, the ministers, all Liberals, all parliamentarians to vote for this bill so that Canada will at least say we are not part of the genocide and we're not complicit.
Mr. Omar, anything to add?
I mean, I've been raised all my whole life onto respecting and being on the promise of two-state solutions. It's more than welcomed. But this statement yesterday, since yesterday until now, we have on average at least 100 persons are killed a day in the Gaza Strip. And the question here, you made a statement, thank you so much, I appreciate it, about recognizing Palestinian state. It's like long due. But this statement does not save life. It's not saving anybody's life at the moment. Every day, between 100 to 140 persons is killed. My family might be next. Evacuate them. If you are really honest about guaranteeing peaceful solutions, at least save people instead of only sending weapons to kill them. That's my response.
So I've heard many comparisons with Ukraine in terms of how Canada reacts, but and especially relating to security measures, biometrics, things like that, that are not the same for both countries. Is it fair to make that comparison when it is a reality that Hamas is present in the Gaza Strip, that there is a different reality in terms of actions by this group as opposed to Ukrainians, and that there might be more needs for the Canadian government to make sure that it is safe to bring everyone that they are bringing in? Is the comparison fair, the ones I heard today?
Well, I will say this. Canada actually set a gold standard, if you will, in supporting Ukrainians, something that New Democrats call for. That is the standard to which that needs to apply in other situations. Now, if the government says we can't waive biometrics altogether, but surely the government can find workarounds with biometrics. One example would be using credible NGOs on the ground to do the biometrics. That has been done before in other countries. That is actually a technique or a tool, if you will, that is an effective one that the government can deploy. I have called for the government, as an example, to bring people to a third country and then do the biometrics there. And then they can go through the process and bring people to safety. We actually have cases, individuals, where their biometrics has been done, and still they can't get to safety. There is no reason, no justifiable reason with the barriers that the government has put up. Every time there is contradictory information, and we know on the ground that there's contradictory information because we have family members right here who spoke today whose biometrics has been completed, and yet they still can't get to safety. The government said to them, the former Minister of Immigration told them, get out of Gaza yourself. First they say, you can't do it because you might be engaging in a process that is not sanctioned. And they say, don't do it. Then they say, do it. Then people did it and then got outside of Gaza, and then they were waiting for the government to engage in the process to bring them to safety. Well, they're not getting to safety. They're stuck there still. Like, you know, to what end can you justify the endless inability for the government to act? And when you look at other countries where they have been able to bring people to safety, are they not afraid of potential terrorists? Of course they are, but they have found a workaround. And Canada needs to do the same. And let's just remember this, not every single Palestinian is a terrorist, and stop judging them as such. That's what the government needs to do. That's what Canada needs to do. Canada has been a beacon for as long as I could remember, as a country that shows humanitarian measures, that actually stood up and above in the global stage. Where is Canada now? Words are cheap, and you need to match your actions with words. And so many countries, so many people who are not getting the same treatment. Sudan is another case, and I can go on for days about how Sudanese are not getting to safety and faced with barriers. So when you set a standard, apply that standard fairly and equitably.
Can I just say one thing to that? I think it's important to remember that the concept of terrorism is a tool of political convenience, right? So the definition of that, just like we said about Nelson Mandela, he was on the terrorist list for far long after apartheid fell. So we have to remember that. And secondly, we should be much more concerned at this point about former IDF soldiers coming back to Canada. Canadians who fought in the IDF coming back to Canada. Anybody who served in the IDF coming to Canada. You have, it is clear that the IDF is committing terrorism every single day, and that's the designation that should be taking place right now.
Okay. Berta? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, Ms. Kwan, you were mentioning that you haven't gotten a response from Minister Diab on that May 26th letter. As the immigration critic, have you been able to speak with her about other issues that you may have raised?
Marginally. I've had a first meeting with the minister in the last parliament. Actually, in fact, with all the other issues, I took to it so that I would bring all those issues that were brought to her predecessors, And I renewed all those letters, we've renewed all those issues, and I presented them all to her. And we had a very brief meeting at that time, saying that there are many issues to which you need to pay attention and put your mind to, because these are urgent matters. Unfortunately, today, there has been very little action, and it's been very difficult to actually, frankly, get a response from the minister.
Ms. Marku, can you tell us a bit about just the status of trying to file this case before the federal court? Where do things stand now on that front?
So the cases were filed last year. They've progressed very slowly through the federal court. We've started getting a few hearings for families who have pending visa applications, and we're also waiting for a few more to either proceed to a hearing or be dismissed. So we represent people who submitted visa applications and then have been waiting for an amount of time that we say is unreasonable and unjustified, and we also represent people who properly expressed an interest in the policy and never got the codes they needed to even submit a visa application. So the status on this litigation is it's pending.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you.